Now today we will discuss components of a cell and the organelles which are inside the cell. So these are the various types of components which are present inside a cell, and these components collectively make cell to perform efficiently every function inside the body, such as cell membrane, nucleus, ribosome, rough endoplasmic reticulum, Golgi body, mitochondria, chloroplast, lysosome and perioxome, centriole and microtubules, etc. So first one is cell membrane. Now we will discuss it in detail. Cell membrane is also known as selective gatekeeper of life. Basic structure and functions of cell. These components function collectively to sustain cellular homeostasis. Homeostasis means the environment, what type of environment exists inside the cell and outside the cell, which maintain is. So the standard term is known as homeostasis and carry out vital life processes. So we will discuss in detail cell membrane. Cell membrane is also known as selective gatekeeper of life. It means cell membrane, the main and most top function is to stop the molecules which are not necessary for the internal environment of the cell and permit the nutrients or solvents which are necessary to run a cell. So this is the main function of the cell membrane. That's why it is known as selective permeable or selective gatekeeper of life. These are the main functions which we will discuss in elaborately, like cell membrane encloses the cell, acting as a selective barrier between the internal and external environment. Main function is to control the movement of the substance, allowing nutrients in and expelling waste. Embedded protein aid in molecular transport and enable cellular communication. Now first of all, cell membrane. What is cell membrane? Cell membrane is a vital structure that defines the boundary of the cell, playing a critical role in maintaining homeostasis and mediating interactions between the cell and its environment. Its complexity and versatility allow to serve as a selective barrier, and that not only protect the cell's interior but also facilitates communication and transport of the molecules. This detailed exploration of the cell membrane covers its structure, function, and roles of embedded proteins, completed with examples to illustrate its importance in this lecture. So now we will discuss the structure and composition of the cell membrane. If we talk about the structure of the cell membrane, so cell membrane is known as phospholipid bilayer. Phospholipid bilayer means it is made up of phospholipid. Bilayer means this is a bilayer. This is phospholipid bilayer, and outside and inner side, these are the proteins. So this is the outer globular protein and this is the inner globular protein, and this is the phospholipid bilayer. Because two layers are present, that's why the combination is known as phospholipid bilayer, which forms a continuous barrier around the cell. Phospholipids are amphipathic molecules. These phospholipids are amphipathic in nature, which means they have the property hydrophilic, means water attracting heads, and hydrophobic as well as. Hydrophobic means water repelling. In aqueous environment, these molecules spontaneously arrange themselves into bilayer, with the hydrophobic tails facing inwards. Hydrophobic, this is hydrophobic tails and this is hydrophobic hydrophilic. Hydrophilic means this layer attract the water and this layer repel the water. Now next is embedded with this layer, various types of protein are also present that contribute to the membrane's functionality. These proteins can be broadly classified into two categories: integral protein and peripheral protein. Integral protein, these are from the bottom side, these are known as the integral protein or peripheral proteins. While on the above side, glycoproteins are present, over which carbohydrates and sugar chain are also attached to that. Means carbohydrate may also attach to these proteins and lipids, forming glycoproteins and glycolipids, forming glycolipids and glycoproteins over the head of this site, which are crucial for cell recognition and cell signaling. Cells recognition and cell signaling is possible due to this phenomenon of glycoproteins and glycolipids. For example, if we talk about that a nerve cell means neurons, the cell membrane is specialized to facilitate the rapid transmission of electric signals. The high concentration of ion channels means a type of integral protein in the membrane of neurons allows for the quick movement of ions, which generate the action potential necessary for the nerve impulse transmission. So this is about the superficially structure of cell membrane, which is made up of phospholipid layer and protein as well as. Now we will talk about the cell membrane act as a selective barrier. How? One of the primary function of the cell membrane is to enclose the cell, acting as a selective barrier that carefully regulates the internal environment. By controlling what enters and exits, the membrane ensures that essential nutrients are absorbed and waste products are removed, maintaining the cell's internal balance. Selective permeability is a hallmark of the cell membrane. Small non-polar molecules like oxygen, carbon dioxide can typically diffuse freely through the lipid bilayer. In contrast, polar molecules and ions cannot easily cross the barrier without assistance. This is where specialized transport proteins come into play. For instance, glucose, a vital energy source, requires the help of a specific carrier protein to pass into the cell. How? Through the facilitated diffusion, means glucose enters the cell through the facilitated diffusion. In this process, glucose molecule binds to the proteins, which then undergoes a conformational change to transport it across the membrane. An everyday example of this process can be seen in human cells. When you digest food, your intestinal cell absorb nutrients like glucose and amino acids. The selective nature of the cell membrane ensures that these beneficial molecules enter the cell, which harmful substances are kept out or actively expelled. So this is about the selective barrier. It acts as a selective barrier. Now next we will discuss about the important feature of the cell membrane, that is molecular transport mechanism. The cell membrane employs a variety of molecular transport mechanisms to control the movement of substances. These mechanisms include passive transport, means such as diffusion and osmosis, and active transmission, यानी कि active transport each playing a distinct role in cellular function. Passive transport means this involves the movement of molecules along their concentration gradient without the need for energy expenditure. Simple diffusion allows small molecules to cross the membrane directly through the phospholipid bilayer. Osmosis, a special case of diffusion, refers especially to the movement of water molecules across a semi-permeable membrane. For example, plant cells rely on osmosis to maintain turgor pressure, which is essential for keeping the plant rigid upright. Next is facilitated diffusion. Larger or polar molecules that cannot diffuse through the lipid bilayer are assisted by chiral proteins or carrier protein. An example is the transport of ions such as sodium and potassium, which are essential for nerve impulse transmission and muscles contraction. Ion channels in the membrane open and close in response to electric signal, allowing these ions to move in and out of the cell rapidly. Next is active transport. In cases where molecules need to move against their concentration gradient, the cell utilizes active transport that requires energy, usually in form of ATP. A classical example is the sodium-potassium pump, which actively transports sodium ions outside the cell while importing potassium ions. This pump is critical for maintaining the electrochemical gradient across the cell membrane, which is necessary for various cellular processes including the generation of nerve impulse. Each of these transport mechanisms underscores the cell membrane's role as a dynamic barrier that is both protective and responsive to the needs of the cell. Now we will talk about embedded proteins. The embedded proteins means the workhouse of the cell membrane. Embedded protein means the proteins which are present inside the cell membrane, how they works. Embedded proteins are integral cell membrane's functions. They serve multiple roles that embedded. Each of these transport mechanisms underscore the cell membrane's role as a dynamic barrier that is both protective and responsive to the needs of the cell. Now next we will talk about the important feature of the cell membrane, that is embedded proteins. Embedded proteins means the proteins which are present inside the cell membrane. How they works? These are also known as workhouse of the cell membrane. Embedded proteins are integral to the cell membrane's functions. They serve multiple roles that are crucial for the cell's interaction and environment. So in this we will also discuss transport proteins, receptor proteins, enzymatic proteins and cell adhesion molecules. First is transport proteins. These proteins facilitate the movement of substance that cannot cross the membrane on their own. For example, aquaporins are specialized proteins that form channels specifically for water, ensuring that water molecules can rapidly move into and outside of the cell depending on osmotic condition. This is particularly important in kidney cell where water reabsorption is essential for regulating body fluid balance. So this is transport proteins. Next is receptor proteins, how receptor protein acts inside the embedded proteins. These proteins act as a communication hub by binding to signaling molecules such as hormones and neurotransmitters. Once a receptor binds to its specific ligand, it undergoes a conformational change that triggers a cascade of events inside the cell. A well-known example is the insulin receptor, which play a crucial role in regulating glucose uptake in the cells. When insulin binds to its receptor on muscle or fat cells, it initiates a signaling pathway that results in the transport of glucose into the cell. Next is enzymatic proteins, how they work inside the embedded proteins. Proteins embedded in the cell membrane have catalytic function, means they act as an enzyme to speed up the chemical reaction at the cell surface. For instance, certain digestive enzymes are found in the membranes of the intestinal cells, where they help to break down complex nutrients into simpler molecules that can be absorbed. Next is the cell adhesion molecules. What are the molecules which can adhere to the embedded proteins inside the cell membrane? These proteins are involved in binding cells to each other and to the extracellular matrix. This adhesion is crucial for the formation of tissues and organs, as well as for maintaining the structural integrity of the body. For example, cadherins are a type of cell adhesion molecules that play a significant role in the formation of tissues during embryonic development and in maintaining the structure of adult tissues. Now next is the cellular communication and role of the membrane. That is also a main feature of the cell membrane, how cellular communication occurs and what type of role played by the cell membrane. It also acts as a barrier. Beyond this, the cell membrane is a critical facilitator of cellular communication. By interacting with external molecules, the membrane helps the cell sense and respond to its environment. This communication is essential for processes such as immune responses, tissue repair, and even the regulation of metabolism. Now let us discuss an example of neurotransmitter release in the brain. When a neuron receives a signal, neurotransmitters are released into the synaptic gap and bind to the receptor on neighboring cell's membrane. This binding triggers a response in the receiving cell, where it be the generation of an electrical signal or the activation of a particular metabolic pathway. This complex interplay between the cell membrane and the external signals is fundamental to the functioning of the nervous system. So this is about example of the cellular communication, how the cells communicate. Similarly, the immune system relies on cell membrane receptor to detect pathogens. Cells like macrophages have receptors that recognize molecular pattern commonly found on pathogens. Once these receptors bind to the pathogen, the cell can initiate an immune system engulfing and destroying the invader. This example highlights how the cell membrane not only protects the cell but also play a crucial role in identifying complex and doing more good services in physiological responses. The cell membrane in health and disease, how it works, that is also an important feature of cell membrane. The integrity and functionality of cell membrane are essential for health. Alteration or damage to the membrane can lead to significant health issues. Examples: in many in many neurodegenerative diseases, the disruption in the membrane's structure or in the functions of membrane proteins can impair neural communication, leading to symptoms such as memory loss or impaired motor function. Furthermore, the cell membrane is a target for many pathogens, viruses. For example, first attached to the specific receptor on the cell membrane before they can enter the cell and begin replicating. Understanding how viruses interact with cell membranes has been key in developing antiviral drugs and vaccines. The ongoing research into the mechanism of vital entry into the cell has led to significant advancement in the treatment and prevention of viral infection. So these are the some highlighted specific features of the cell membrane and the important work which has been done and maintained by the cell membrane. So the common term, the important term homeostasis is used for the cell membrane. So these are the specific three features which we have discussed in detail about the cell membrane, how it works inside the cellular communication, in health and disease, embedded proteins, and the structural integrity of the cell to maintain its environment outside and inside. Lastly, we will conclude that the cell membrane is much more than just a boundary. It's a dynamic and multi-phased structure which is very essential for life sustain. Acting as a selective barrier, it meticulously regulates the movement of substance, ensuring that nutrients enter and waste products are expelled. Embedded proteins are central to these processes, facilitating molecular transport, mediating cellular communication, supporting a variety of other functions such as enzymatic activity and cell adhesion. Examples from various cell types are whether in nerve cells with rapid ion transport, intestine cell absorbing nutrients, immune cell detecting pathogens, illustrate the cell membrane's critical role in maintaining the cellular function and integrity. So, its sophisticated design and complex interaction, the cell membrane enables cell to thrive, adapt, and communicate, underscoring its significance in both health and disease. As research continues to unravel its mysteries, the cell membrane remains a focal point in understanding the fundamental processes that underpin life. Thank you.